Welcome to the Delineation, an astrology show with Cam White.
How's it going, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to, I believe this is episode 12 of the Delineation. I can't believe I've only done 12 of these episodes. Anyway, as you can tell from the title of this episode, we have quite a bit to talk about. There is really, I wanted to really organize this talk, and I found that really difficult simply because there are so many things that we have to go into and so many things that we are going to go into. But I want to start with a few opening statements. One, a lot of what astrology is looking into the future and understanding things maybe we shouldn't really understand. And so that puts us at an interesting position when it comes to interpreting world events. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today may not necessarily be viewed as popular for a lot of people. If you are conditioned to be very aligned with a lot of the mainstream narrative. However, today I want to talk about the Ukraine-Russia situation through both a historical and astrology lens. And, you know, just for also some context, today I'm recording this on March 23rd at 8:13 a.m. essentially. I did not really plan this timeout specifically. This was kind of off of a whim. But I do realize that today is the Mercury-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. And I think that's really appropriate for this conversation because I think we're going to be going into a lot of the unknown. And I want to talk about things that maybe you guys don't necessarily know about or understand. And my goal of this video is to make you think for yourself, really. In a world full of misinformation and propaganda, I think the remedy is thinking for yourself, asking for yourself, questioning things on your own. This is why we're into astrology. We look at things from a different perspective and we're not afraid to be curious, right? And so, my goal of this video, again, is it's not to this side, that side. You guys know I don't play that game. My goal is to bring awareness to the depth of the situation and what it means for both just the astrology, but also for your personal life, because what we're going to get to is this will affect your personal life. This is much bigger than just Russia versus Ukraine. This is huge. And the astrology shows that. And so anyway, I just want you to walk into this with an open mind, regardless of what background you come from. And I also want you to, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to refer to some videos and I'll have those in the description and check those out, but also do your own research. I know that's not popular, but I was raised in school to do my own research. So I understood situations rather than just kind of being listened to what I was told. But I guess that's different now. But we're going to talk about that. And so another thing I want to say, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is, again, if you have been listening to the mainstream narrative on a lot of this stuff is not going to be viewed as popular. And I have been I've seen some comments that were like, oh, because I, on one of my weeklies, I didn't, completely denounce Putin. And someone was like, oh, you're just doing this for subscriber money. That's why you're not doing all that. And I just want to say, I'm taking a gigantic risk talking about any of this stuff on my channel. I don't know if you guys know, I only have like less than 40,000 subscribers. I mean, yes, I want to make my subscribers happy, but I'm taking more of a risk talking about stuff that the mainstream wants to censor. And, you get 3 strikes on YouTube, you're off. That pretty much kills everything. This isn't, I have a lot of risk going into this. This is why a lot of astrologers and a lot of other professionals don't talk about this stuff because it's very risky. However, I want you to understand that it's that important to me to talk to you guys about this. And so I don't want you to think that I take this lightly at all. I take my job and my role very seriously. And I want you to know that. And I can only really express that until you guys, see for your own selves. 1 second. Sorry, I didn't close my blind enough. Anyway, so let me also start off with saying this is a war. A lot of people are going to be affected. And I am completely anti-war on all sides. My heart and my true actions. This is something I'm doing so we can prevent this and stop this. My true thoughts, prayers, everything to both the Ukrainian people who are suffering under this and also the Russian people who are suffering under this and the rest of the people who are going to be suffering under this. So this is going to be a turbulent conversation. I try to organize my thoughts because there's so much here. I just kind of want to show you what I'm going to be reading off of. There's really a lot to cover, and I know this is a little bit crazy, but this is a really big situation. The binary thinking of just Putin bad and Zelensky good is not how this works. And if you are being guided that way, I want you to maybe gain some more perspectives. And this is really important because in this age of information and hyper media, I really like using the word hyper because it's just insane how fast things can blow up. And war hysteria is very real. You guys are much more powerful than you think. The people are much more powerful than they think, and you just can't willy-nilly, call for essentially World War III. Let me start off by saying, regardless of what your opinions are, there's something that has to be made very clear. If you are wanting a no-fly zone for Ukraine, you are wanting World War III. And mind you, let me also start off by saying World War III is going to happen. And that's what this conversation's about. It's going to happen. We're here. But if you're calling for the no-fly zone, you're not just calling for World War III. You're just calling for nuclear annihilation. And I'm not saying this lightly. That's what you're calling for. You literally want millions, billions of people to die from nuclear fallout. That's what you want. That is what Zelensky, who is calling for a no-fly zone, because I don't know if you guys know how a no-fly zone works. The U.S. military would have to enforce it, which means if we would have to take troops over there and we would shoot down from an American would shoot down a Russian plane. This is the biggest Russia has more nuclear arsenal than we do. They also have clearly a crazy president. Guys, this is fucking reality. This isn't a joke. So when you're like, yeah, no fly zone, we need to do everything for Ukraine. Hold the fuck up. Hold on. Just hold the fuck up. Hold on. I want to talk about who's really at fault for this war. Let me first say that I don't like Putin. Putin is a fucking autocratic, pretty much a dictator. He kind of has been running the country undemocratically. Pretty much fucks over the Russian civilians. I mean, one of my favorite artists is this band group called I Speak. Some of you might be familiar with them, but their shows get shut down by the Russian government. And I don't really, and I oppose the Russian government. I think I oppose most governments. But when you look at this from the bigger perspective here, of course, Russia should not have done any of that stuff. But when you really understand what position they're in, this is a kind of, there's no real right or wrong answer here. This is just, real life politics. It's not of course he shouldn't have done that. But then, let's kind of talk about this. So number one, this is America's war. That is probably the most important thing to understand, because oftentimes people don't necessarily know the true power of the American military industrial complex. It has it did. I don't necessarily know if that's how it is anymore, but America's military was the world police. And we have been pushing for this for a long time. There are special interest groups and there is power. Well, for example, the military industrial complex, for you guys that don't understand, there is so much money and so much power in guns, in ammo, in war, that it literally has its own momentum, that it truly can't even be stopped by individuals inside. It is its own living, breathing thing. That's how big it is. And it has so much more power than any government, than any individual, than any idea, because this whole world is ran off war and money. And we'll get to all that stuff here in a second. But because America is right now, for at least right now, the world reserve currency, and America is the world's police, and because America is this big actor here, our special interest groups, Raytheon, Boeing, wanting to promote this type of stuff, it's really funny. People think I'm very conservative, but let me just also call out the conservatives in fucking office right now who are like, oh my God, this is Biden's war. But then, they're putting money into Raytheon and all of these military industrial complex companies and shit like that. So our Congress people aren't actually for us. No one in the government's for us. They're profiting off this war. Both sides of them are. So just understand, this isn't a left or right thing. Like I really come from, I think, the George Carlin perspective. There's a big club and you're not in it. But it's not just a big club. This is what we're going into is very much, it's not a left or right thing. They want you to think it's a left or right thing because then they can just do whatever they want. So this is America's war. We have been pushing this for a long time. We're going to be talking a lot about that as we kind of go along. There's really so much to talk about. Number one, we are going to go into World War III. Let me take a drink here. We're going to go into World War III, but let me also just say this. Things are going to get both worse in Russia and Ukraine. Today, again, I'm talking about this on March 23rd. Wednesday, March 23rd, 8 a.m. As far as I know, nothing crazy has happened yet, but World War III is going to happen. And also, let me just give some credit here. A lot of this podcast influence. This idea came from me listening to a podcast from Gordon White on Rune Soup. I don't know if you guys know Gordon White. There's no relation, as far as I know, but he runs a podcast called Rune Soup, and he pretty much does a whole podcast calling out astrologers, and it was very powerful to me. It impacted me in a lot of ways, and I found it very inspiring. And I think it's important to talk about these things because I also think the role of an astrologer is so much more important today than it ever has been. But World War III is going to happen. This decade is going to be rough, and that has been confirmed through the Russia-Ukraine invasion. That's been confirmed. How bad it gets is only, if we're going to call for a no-fly zone and just start fucking throwing missiles back and forth, and shit, let's see if we even get to the other side. But, hopefully we can de-escalate and actually do any war. But let me also say with the Russia-Ukraine situation from right now will get worse, but it will also end. And let me talk about this. Let me give a shout out to S.J. Anderson. He's an incredible astrologer. You guys should check him out. And we did a podcast on Dan's podcast, the Cosmic Keys podcast, another podcast you guys would really like, especially if you're into the very based black pilled shit, because we really talk about all this stuff there. But S.J. Anderson brought up to my attention of the last Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. And this was the Treaty of Paris. Let me actually bring this up here. So yeah, the Treaty of Paris of 1856. And this is when it brought an end to the Crimean War between the Russian Empire and the alliance of the Ottoman Empire, Great Britain, and the Second French Empire. So when we talk about that April 30th eclipse, I'm talking as if you already know what I'm talking about right now. And that's what a lot of this is going to be too. So just, hang on. This is going to be a turbulent conversation. But we all know April 30th, Jupiter, Neptune, Venus eclipse thing. That's happening. This will come to an end at some point, probably pretty soon, and there'll probably be a treaty of some sort. But it will also get worse before it gets better. And I think regardless of what the Russia-Ukraine thing is, regardless of what that stops right now, that doesn't stop the momentum of what this next decade has to offer. And I don't say this in fear-mongering either. I I say this as much more of a knowledge is power. If you know what's up and you decide to take action on that, you can change your life. This is not a fear thing. I don't want you to be afraid. There's really nothing to be afraid about. I mean, I think that's kind of the calm thing about the whole nuclear fallout thing. I mean, what a bang. What a way to end the 2020, season. End COVID with World War III nuclear annihilation. I mean, that's a way to go out, but this isn't to be like a fear or afraid or anything. I just think this is a time to really check in. Really check in. Because there's a lot of momentum going on, and a lot of things are about to change, and a lot of things are going to move really fast. You're going to pay more for gas. You're going to pay more for rent. You're not going to have money. Food's going to go up. These are real life things. And you're going to go, why is this happening? Why is my food going up? Why is this going up? Why? And if you're just listening to the mainstream, none of it's going to make sense on the mainstream media, which, by the way, they have done nothing but lied to us for these past few years. We know that through both the Russiagate thing, who, I was a believer of. The Mueller report thing, I was very up in kind of arms about it. It was very confusing to me. But we learned that was a lie. And if you don't know that that's a lie, that's a lie. Again, I'm going to be doing my best to post as much links to stuff in the description so you can do your own research and you can kind of go off on your own. But Russiagate was a lie. They also said the Hunter Biden laptop thing was Russian disinformation. And that just got confirmed a couple days ago that was real. And I don't know if you've looked into the Hunter Biden email thing. It's God, let me just say this. I mean this in all satire, but truly Hunter Biden's one of my favorite people. Crackhead. On his laptop, it's secret illegal files. That's I think that was the name of the files or anything. It's so funny. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But this is America's war. We started this long time ago. Long time ago. But let's talk about NATO expansion. Let's talk about NATO for a second. If you're not familiar with what NATO is essentially the North Atlantic, I can't remember, treaty organization? I forgot. All you need to know is what NATO was built for was to protect European Western countries from nuclear threat of Russia. NATO's whole point was to defend against Russia. Let me say that again. NATO's whole existence and purpose was to be pretty much a backstop, a threat, a defense system against Russia. When the USSR fell, it was not in contract, but it was in spirit that NATO, because when the USSR fell, there was really no point for NATO. There was no threat from Russia in the Iron Curtain, right? There was no need for NATO. And so there was this kind of understanding between the West and Gorbachev that NATO really wouldn't expand. Now, that wasn't written in paper. And of course, Hitler also said he wouldn't invade countries, and he did. So, of course, politicians lie. Go figure. But that was kind of the idea. And now let's talk about what NATO is, for example. NATO, from the Russian perspective, I just want to put from the Russian perspective. So, your country collapses and there's a whole military alliance that's against you. And they're a nuclear power. NATO is essentially America's police force because Europe does not contribute to our tax dollars pay for Europe's safety and Saudi Arabia's safety and Taiwan's safety. Well, I mean, Taiwan actually has a much more influential impact on our economy, but we pay for that police force. It's pretty much America. And so NATO expanded throughout the 2000s and the 90s. NATO went to a lot of countries, including some of the countries that were a part of the USSR, but then fell into that turned into their own country after the fall of it. I can't remember the countries' names right now. But there was also this idea that Ukraine wouldn't be a part of NATO. A lot of the Eastern Bloc, or the Eastern Bloc was turned into NATO countries. And that means if anything were to happen to these countries, America would come in and all of the countries would come in and attack. Meaning, let's say Russia today sent a bomb to Poland. That would put every NATO country, including America, completely at total war with Russia. So NATO is a hostile military complex against Russia, right? So how would we feel as an American perspective if someone put nuclear, well, let's say, people wanted to put nuclear bombs in Mexico, and they wanted to, let's say they put nuclear bombs in Canada, and let's say a country hostile to America. Let's say Russia put nuclear bombs in Cuba. I mean, we already learned what happened when they put those in Cuba. We almost literally had nuclear annihilation. Let's say they did that. Let's say they put it in Cuba. Let's say they put it in Canada too. And then let's say Russia put nukes in Mexico. And let's say America's economy, let's say America wasn't a superpower. Let's say Russia was the mega superpower. They were the mega super bully, which that's what America really is. I mean, we literally just like snapped the backbone of like Russia's economy, which really affects the Russian people much more than it does the Russian government. Because let me just say this. A lot of people that think the sanctions are working literally have never, ever even had a thought about like military plans or objectives. You don't think the Russian government knew that sanctions would be put up like that? You don't think they were already prepared for this stuff? It's not that simple of, oh, we're going to do sanctions and Putin will stop and the Russian people will rise up. So what we do is we cripple the Russian economy to make the Russian civilians overthrow a leader that they didn't even elect, who poisons his opposition party. And it's now their responsibility to overthrow the government because America wants to cripple its economy? What? Don't get me wrong. There's got to be an end to this. And of course, there's going to be consequences to pay. And it looks like we're all going to be paying them, right? But that's not the solution. Now the Ukraine thing. It's very complicated because my heart goes out to the Ukrainian people, the civilians that didn't ask for any of this stuff. But let's talk about, there's a lot to break down here. Let's just talk about the neo-Nazi thing. Let's talk about Zelensky, actually. So a lot of people are very obsessed with Zelensky. And I personally, as a leader of a country, I think it's very cool that at least he's not running out. Like, I thought it was interesting that leaders of Canada, like Justin Trudeau, literally fled the capital because of the trucker rally. But then at least Zelensky is like staying in a city that's being bombed. I think that's actually admirable. But what's not admirable is his calling for this no-fly zone, or even giving them military aid. When he calls for a no-fly zone, he is asking that the Ukrainian people are worth nuclear annihilation. I think it's an interesting question to ask. Now, I want to give you guys another perspective real quick. Let's say I'm 25 years old. My earliest memory was 9/11. And I remember the war in Iraq. And I remember growing up, because my parents all watched Fox News, going, why are we doing this? I grew up in the 90s where it was all peace and love and shit. And for the people who are my age that don't know what Iraq was, let me just tell you what happened, because this will make a lot more sense about what's going on right now. And this does have to bring up 9/11 stuff. Pretty much, mostly Saudi Arabia nationals. It was like 15 of the 19 hijackers were actually from Saudi Arabia. Did 9/11, right? But the main conspirator of 9/11, oh gosh, I always get the two. I think it was Osama bin Laden. Yeah, because I always get the other guy confused. I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, we heard that he was being held out in Afghanistan, right? So the American troops went to Afghanistan, and in like 5 minutes, we like overthrew the Taliban and like did all the stuff. And that's when we were, spreading democracy, and we're going to rebuild. That's why we were in Afghanistan for 20 years and it failed. But then Dick Cheney, George Bush, Donald Rumsfeld had this great idea of saying, hey, let's go to Iraq And let's get that oil, because I don't know if you guys are aware, I did an episode on my Delineation podcast with Heresy Financial. We talked about the US being the reserve currency of the world. The US, I don't know if you guys know this, in order to buy and trade oil, it's all backed in US dollars. So in order to do anything with oil, it has to be backed with US dollars. So this, inflates the US economy, puts us, in this position of control. And you have people like, again, George Bush, Dick Cheney mostly, and Donald Rumsfeld saying, let's go to Iraq. There's a lot of oil there. And Dick Cheney, who runs a huge oil business, I don't know if you're aware of that, said, let's go to Iraq. But they said, how can we get to Iraq? How can we convince the American people to go to Iraq? Well, number one, at the time, Americans couldn't point out a fucking Iraq on a map to you, just like half of you couldn't point out Ukraine 5 minutes ago on a map. And they said, what's a good reason to go there? They said, well, we need to get rid of Saddam Hussein and we need to spread democracy. What spreading democracy looked like was killing over 200,000 civilians. The Iraq War also was, we were going to topple Saddam Hussein, and they had weapons of mass destruction. No one ever told us what weapons of mass destruction were. It was very vague. It was very, what's going on? But I want you to think about the similarities between what Putin said about invading Ukraine and about what we said about invading Iraq. Except we killed 200,000 Iraqi civilians, which, by the way, had no part, pretty much. I think it was like a couple of Iraqis maybe, like that were a part of 9/11, had no part in this. And so we killed 200,000 civilians. This is a number all the way up to 2019 because we still have troops there. We completely added destabilization to the Middle East, which is a product of imperialism from the 20th century, or the end of the Ottoman Empire. But let's say we did that. But let's say everyone in the world said, wow, that's really fucked up of America to do that. Let's sanction the American people or American oligarchs. Let's say they sanctioned people in Congress and the Senate, and then they fucked up our economy. And the world said, Americans, it is your job to overthrow your shitty government until they stop, right? Now, these are two completely different scenarios, I know, but I just want, it's hard. Americans really need to understand that we've done this. This idea that, and we're doing it right now. The people in Yemen are going through one of the worst humanitarian crises of all history. And why? Because Saudi Arabia is fucking annihilating them for shits and gigs, pretty much. And do you know how Saudi Arabia is annihilating with them missiles and guns? Us. We're like, here you go, Saudi Arabia. We love you. Please, here's our guns and weapons. Sure, you're using it for one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world, but whatever. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying that, you can't be for the Ukrainian people and against this war, but I'm just saying, why aren't we out in the streets? Why aren't we calling for that? Huh? Do you know how many fucking people we've killed? And nothing? But this is important to you? So let's just talk about that. Well, that's one thing. Let's go back to this, I've talked a lot about this on my Patreon, by the way, so you should check out my Patreon. But I did a video about the last time. Let's talk about the second thing. Let's talk about the Venus retrograde. Right now it's March. Venus is like in Aquarius, but we just had a Venus retrograde in Capricorn. Most of you are familiar with that. 8 years ago, the last time we had a Venus retrograde in Capricorn, because Venus goes retrograde in the same sign every 8 years. The last time that happened, that was about December of 2014, December of 2013, going into the beginning of 2014. What happened during this time? This is when Russia annexed Crimea. Now, if you're not familiar with this, Crimea has always been mostly a Russian population. They kind of accepted it. And here's the thing. This was during the Obama administration. And interesting enough, there were still war hawks in the White House at the time. And Obama was a fucking war hawk. He's a war criminal. Joe Biden, Obama, literal war criminals. I thought it was funny. Joe Biden's like, you're a war criminal. Like he literally just like, didn't we just strike like an Afghan fucking family like on accident? Like back into, anyway, you guys probably don't even know about that. He's a war criminal too. They're all war criminals. None of them are fucking innocent. So anyway, back in 2013, 2014, this was also the time of the Ukrainian Civil War. Some of you might remember this. And there was a coup, which a coup is pretty much when, you know, people try to overthrow the government, whether that's backed by foreign powers or not. And we backed this coup. Who did we install as a leader? President Zelensky. Now, why did we not? Now, what's interesting is a lot of people wanted us to give, when Russia annexed Crimea, a lot of people were like, we need to give them more, weapons and all of this aid. And you don't want to know why Obama didn't actually give any aid to Ukraine at the times? This is one of the rare times Obama, said something good. He goes, aiding the Ukrainians and giving them weapons would give them this idea that they can defeat Russia. And right now in the media, all you're seeing is Ukrainians are going to beat Russia. Ukrainians are going to beat Russia. And it tears my heart apart. It's not going to be that way. It's not. But we have gaslit. We, Americans, not maybe me and you personally, but the American government has gaslit the Ukrainian people, specifically Zelensky, that one, he can be a part of NATO. We all pretty much know the whole NATO situation. And a lot of people in the arguments or in the comments of my videos are like, Ukraine is a sovereign nation and allowed to be a part of whatever military alliance it wants. So you believe in military alliances. So you believe in the military industrial complex. So you are a war propagandist. That aside, the other thing is, no, they're not. A hostile military organization that's hostile to a specific nation, and that one specific nation says, hey, please don't put nuclear bombs on my border because that's our red line. We're just asking for that one thing. You've already put it on all of our other borders. Just don't put it on this one. Otherwise, you're going to put us in a pinch. And so then we lied to Zelensky, and this was never going to happen. Ukraine was never going to be a part of NATO. It never was. But we lied to them and said, you can be a part of NATO. You could be a part of NATO. I mean, just to go back to this Zelensky guy, you want to talk about, the more I've looked into this, you want to talk about someone who, I mean, I think this was yesterday, the day before. He literally pretty much outed himself as a fascist because he banned all opposition parties, which we're about to go into the neo-Nazi thing in Ukraine here. I know that's kind of controversial. We're going to go into that in a second. And there are neo-Nazis in the Ukrainian government that we're backing. But anyway, we're going to come back to that. That is happening. But instead of banning those voices, Zelensky banned the left voices, like mostly socialists and like democratic voices. He banned all that and nationalized media for the state. So he pretty much turned himself in. We're fighting for democracy, and Ukraine's this democratic, country. Now they're under martial law. So it's just one of those things where he's doing the thing that we're supposed to be defending for. Like I just want you to know how confusing the situation is to understand. Like, again, I'm not trying to say you should be this or that, but like, for one, he just said, okay, we're going to ban opposition parties so he could stay in power. And also we're going to nationalize state media, which is what Russia does, so they can have a unified voice. That's fascism. Let's go into this Nazi thing. So I saw this article, and let me talk about also too who's talking about this. Where am I getting this information from? And I'm going to be linking a lot of this stuff in the comments. I saw a comment under a video not that long ago that said, comedians are the only ones actually saying the truth, and I think that's just because the reality is such a joke. That was an insane synopsis of reality. Because really the only people that are actually saying anything remotely not special interest group motivated or propaganda are comedians. Isn't that sad? Isn't that fucking sad? And Jimmy Dore. You guys should check out Jimmy Dore, who is a far leftist, by the way. A lot of people think, that this is like a conservative viewpoint. A lot of this shit's coming from a leftist. And he has great journalists like Max Blumenthal, who's been covering this for ages. Aaron Matei, who's been covering this for a long time. In the age of propaganda, in the age of misinformation, you just can't just trust these mainstream narratives. You need to know who journalists you could fucking trust. People like Glenn Greenwald, people like Matt Taibbi. And people are like, oh, blah, 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 blah. You guys are going to have your own opinions about that. The nerdy people like me that are into that. But like, if you're not following these journalists, like, you're not going to understand what's going on. And so Jimmy Dore, God bless the guy. I don't really, it's funny. Most of the comedians I listen to, I don't even like, especially their podcasts. I don't even like their comedy. I don't even think Jimmy Dore is that funny, but he's the only person who's talking about this. And he's talking about how, again, 2014 through 2015, pretty much, there are neo-Nazis in the government. There is this, and again, I brought this up because I was just watching a video of his, and he just mentions this MSNBC article, and it's like, Ukraine does actually have a neo-Nazi problem in the government. Besides even though Putin's misinformation of denazification, you really can't believe anything kind of coming out of Russia, to be honest. But there's a lot of Nazis in the government of Ukraine. That's a real thing. Before the invasion actually happened, I was watching some other news channels that were kind of talking about how the mainstream, when they were like, look at this grandma in Eastern Ukraine, building up for the government. They were being trained by neo-Nazis for this stuff. But what people don't understand is that since 2014, the Ukrainians in Eastern Donbass region have literally killed like 15,000 Russian people. 15,000 Russians in Eastern Ukraine. That's happening. So when we talk about, this is Putin's war, he escalated. One, we're putting nukes on the dude's border and he's surrounded with them. That's a little frightening. Two, the Ukrainian government's literally killed 15,000 like Russian people over the past like 8 years since the last Venus retrograde. So like I'm saying, this is I'm not saying, Russia has every right to do this. But like this fucking lie that's going to get us into World War III, that's going to fuck up all of our lives, it's all a lie. There's much more complication to this than you understand. And let's confirm some stuff. Let's start talking about the astrology for a second. I haven't really talked about the astrology. Something Gordon White says that really hit home is we all know about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. That happened, the great conjunction that happened in 2020. That was the first Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in air signs for the next 200 years. Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happen in the same sign, in the same element of sign every 20 years. So for the next 200 years, it's air signs. Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions represent pretty much beginning, ends of kingdoms, dynasties, eras, pretty easy timing. And I love how Gordon White says, this is triplicity business. The triplicity's changed. What we are going through right now is the last time the triplicities changed was the Industrial Revolution. We had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in Earth signs, and we had this great era and dynasty of material, industrial changes. We're done. You are living in a pivot in history right now. And I don't think you understand what that means. I don't even understand what's going to be next or where that goes, but I do understand the weight of it. And we are living through a pivot in history. With that context being there, we can read into this situation with much better awareness. Because this isn't just Russia invade Ukraine, we're going to slap Russia on the wrist with some sanctions, and then we're going to call it a day. It's not going to work like that. It's not. Put fucking money on it. This is the beginning of a gigantic transition that we don't even have control of. This is triplicity business. This has nothing to do with us, but this has to do with the evolution and the progression of history and our story. That's written in astrology. And if you're not ready to believe that kind of stuff, then what are you doing in astrology? That's what we're here for. And the astrology shows that. I'm going to talk a lot about the astrology. Again, there's a lot of things to really talk about here. And again, like I said, I'm going to be going all over the place. And I know I already kind of have been going all over the place. So thank you. So let me just kind of, what I like to do is I like to reverse engineer situations. So rather than talking about what's going to be next, and what's going to be next, what's going to be next, let me tell you where this ends. This all ends pretty much right after the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Let me pull this up for you. Let's start actually looking at the charts. Let's have a little fun. Let's fast forward. I want you guys to look at this real quick. So this is about March of 2025. We have Saturn about ready to conjoin Neptune with the North Node. Also a Venus retrograde. That totally is another thing. But we're having the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction right now. I talked about this in my year ahead horoscope. This is starting something that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction will really kind of complete or transition. During this time, this will be a lot of Pluto's in Aquarius at this point. Saturn, Neptune, we're going to be going into some crazy times. Not only is this World War III, there's going to be a Russian Revolution, there's going to be an American Civil War thing or whatever the fuck's going to happen here, but it's going to happen here during this time. Anyway, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is pretty much at the same, pretty much right where, then both Saturn and Neptune will ingress into Aries by 2026 and conjoin each other in Aries. This is a big deal. Sorry, I had to turn off my fireplace. It got a little hot in here. This is a really big deal. If you've been on my Patreon, you know what I'm about to say. We had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 1917, and it was in Leo. This was the Russian Revolution. Then we had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Libra in 1953. This was when Stalin died. Then we had a Saturn-Neptune-Uranus conjunction in 1990, and this was the fall of the USSR, the Soviet Union. The next Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries is when the Russian government will fall, whether it's Putin dying or just the Russian government changing. And I can confirm that with you, because let's look at a special someone's chart. Let's look at Putin's chart himself, because that will give us a better idea of this timing. Oh, of course I don't have Putin's chart saved on my Astro Gold for whatever reason, but I need to show it to you guys. Putin's chart. So let's look at this. Shout out. So here, shout out astro.com. Notice that Putin has a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in his 12th house in his chart. So also Lenin has a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in his chart. So these Saturn-Neptune conjunctions are, a part of Russia's timing, right? So this will eventually end with Russia going down. Sorry, I'm getting everything back together here. This is eventually going to end with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, with Russian government collapsing at some point, or, Putin dying. But that's not going to happen until 2025 or 2026. So again, I have a lot to talk about with this stuff. A big thing about this too is that this is why I said, and why I opened up with, this is America's war because of America's Pluto return. This is something a lot of you have probably heard about. I did an episode about it with Heresy Financial. Make sure you check it out. But America has had this power, this imperialist power, for a long time, and it's ending. Because of that, because America is the world's military, and because America and the dollar is the world reserve currency, this affects the world. What unfortunately happens here in America affects the world. And as Pluto goes into Aquarius, a lot of shit's about to go down. So the big thing about this Pluto, and this is something that we talked about we did a 2020 forecast on the Cosmic Keys podcast, and then we also are doing a quarterly one, I believe on Dan's Rothkin. But anyway, we talked about this. the 0 degree Aquarius mark. Let's actually just do this real quick so it looks a little bit better. So here we are. This is March 31st, 2020. Remember what happened then? And Mars and Saturn both ingress into Aquarius and conjoin. Lockdown. Social distancing. Very interesting word. This was the first ingress conjunction at 0 Aquarius of a series of events. And this gave us clues as to what the next series of events will be. This was a really big deal. So, just drop my pen. I'll stop toying with it. So Mars, Saturn conjoins in Aquarius. COVID happens. Lockdown starts, right? Then we fast forward to the end of December of 2020. This is December 21st. And then we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 Aquarius. This was the vaccine. This was when I believe it got authorized for emergency use authorization. Right? Then we had, let's go pretty much a year. End of 2021. And then we had Mars and Venus conjoin at 0 Aquarius. This was all of pretty much at the time that Russia was invading Ukraine and everything went into Aquarius here. We had all this Aquarius stuff. This is what we're dealing with right now. This is all leading up to 2023. March of 2023. Let's show you. If you're listening, this is more of a video you should listen to. Sorry. I mean, you should watch. My bad. March of 2023. Where is it at? March 23rd. Hell, a year from now. That Tame Impala song. One more year. Sorry, I love that song. Pluto enters Aquarius. Hits 0 degree Aquarius. What happened the last time Pluto switched signs? It was a month before the 2008 financial crisis. A lot of I was wrong on a prediction. I thought the economy would collapse when Mars conjoined Pluto after the Venus retrograde. But what we saw was actually America militarize or weaponize its economic power against Russia, which is a very Mars, Pluto, and Capricorn. Like, you know what? Let me fucking make my economy a weapon and like fucking just I mean, that's what they fucking did. Like, those sanctions are insane. Those are insane sanctions. We take them off the SWIFT thing. That was going to cause World War III 5 minutes ago, and it's only going deeper. But anyway, by this point, Pluto enters Aquarius, and this is really the beginning of this Aquarian stuff, the COVID stuff. I'm going to be making a video. My next delineation episode is probably going to be an episode where we kind of just talk about what has happened the last 2 years and the COVID stuff, along with the astrology. But a lot of this is going to be related to that. But as Pluto goes into Aquarius, Pluto rules death, destruction, transformation, corruption, and it's going into the sign of the people. It's going into the side of, division, polarization, me versus you, tribalism. These are all themes that are happening with or without our control. And as Pluto hits Aquarius, well, let's also talk about a few things. Let's talk about this Mars retrograde. Let me also just actually say this. We have the next Mars-Saturn conjunction coming up here in April. That will be pretty bad for Ukraine. Let me actually show you Ukraine's birth chart. So again, and I just want people to know, like, I think it's really shitty how people are just like, yeah, find any reason to pivot. We're not enemies. If you disagree with shit, like, I guess you disagree, but like, just the mainstream really wants people to not really, again, they want it to be you versus me rather than letting them, run the military any way they want. Sorry, I thought I had this saved in my Astro, but I didn't. Let me show you. Let's look at this real quick. Oh, whoops. This is Ukraine's chart. 22 Aquarius. I'm recording this on March 23rd. Here in a couple days, like a week or two, Mars and Saturn are going to conjoin at the moon here in Aquarius. This isn't looking good for Ukraine. at all, really. So we're going to see what that is. And then that will eventually lead into the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which will be some type of treaty. But then after that, here in 2022, the year of our Lord, we're going to be having the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Aries. I believe this is going to be some type of war. This is going to be some type of war. Notice that this is the Mars-Jupiter conjunction at 3 degrees Aries. In 4 or 5 years, in 2025, 2026, maybe my math's wrong, 3 or 5, I can't think. Anyway, this is the exact degree. Well, I think it's at like between 1 and 3 degrees of Aries that Saturn will be conjoining Neptune. Something is starting here. This is a really big deal. This is Mars conjoining Jupiter. It's wartime. So while there might be a treaty of peace in Russia and Ukraine, and I said this too and I said this over too on my Patreon. I think a lot of this is going to deal with Taiwan. I think a lot of things will really change if China invades Taiwan. That's much more of a bigger deal, I think, on the world stage and how the world's going to be affected. But this Mars-Jupiter conjunction will be an initiatory war, probably. And S.J. Anderson brought this up. Later on this year, we're going to be having this Mars retrograde in Gemini. The last 2 times Mars retrograde in Gemini, America was in war. So that's probably going to happen. I mean, if we're just kind of doing statistically. Maybe, I mean, again, this is all astrology. We're all just looking at the stars here and doing hypotheticals and just speculating. But, I mean, like, we're not watching, like, I think if the astrology didn't work, I don't think I would be doing this. Like, this has been pretty hardcore lately. So we're going to have this Mars retrograde. Mars is going to be squaring Neptune. All of the lies that we're being told right now, we will find out about at this time. So just hold on to your britches. This is why we shouldn't just be making, opinions and reacting to, oh my God, Russia bad, Ukraine good. Let's fucking send in a no-fly zone and start World War III so we can all die. Fuck. Anyway. And I understand, because here's the thing. Let me just say, what's super important about this too is this is no one's fault in terms of, like, it's just your job to be educated and to understand. And because if you don't know and this is all new and maybe you disagree or this is hard, all I'm saying is these are very complex situations. And before you just start, like, literally, like, dividing yourselves amongst people and separating yourselves amongst people and causing strife within social relations for no fucking reason, because that's what the media told you. So Mars will station direct. Right? We have that whole Mars retrograde. The last time Mars was retrograde in Gemini we had, and Mars is going to be in Gemini for 8 months. That is, Mars is typically in a sign for 6 weeks. It's going to be in Gemini for 8 months. But I want to show you. Saturn enters Pisces by March. Then Pluto enters Aquarius by March. Then Mars enters Cancer by March. March 2023, Pluto enters Aquarius. Saturn enters Pisces. Mars leaves Gemini and enters Cancer and enters its sign of fall. This will be a huge shift in whatever is going to happen in these next few months. Will eventually shift into this. I want to talk about something real quick. This is something too, I believe SJ brought up to my attention when we were talking that I thought was crazy. America has an Aquarius moon. Russia has an Aquarius moon. Ukraine has an Aquarius moon. China has an Aquarius moon. There's a couple other countries too. As we have Saturn, and we had Saturn and Jupiter go through Aquarius, and all these, key players came up. We're also about to have Pluto go through Aquarius. A lot, when you talk about the moon in Aquarius, and we talk about the heart of a nation, or the people of a nation, how a nation is doing, Saturn going over moon in Aquarius related to the people, it's not looking good. And it hasn't really been good, right? For, most countries, for most people. And I think as Pluto enters Aquarius, I think society, and again, And this is kind of the hard conversation is, it's not a race war. It's not a state war. It's class. It's not even class war anymore. Because of inflation, which is only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. It will not get better for a while. We have, as Americans, I don't know if you guys know what the sanctions did, but what the sanctions did was pretty much show that, okay, we're going to, if you do anything against us, we will cripple your economy like that, which is an act of war, by the way. That is, to Russia, that's an act of war. And I would agree with them. When you completely cripple, what if a country crippled our economy and you all of a sudden couldn't, what if you had to go wait in line at ATM to hopefully pull out whatever fucking cash you could before it was just yanked? How would you feel? I'm not saying the invasion of Ukraine is good. I'm not saying the invasion and that I'm on Putin's side on any of this. I think if you think that way, I think you have brain worms. And I think you need to really wake up with the fact that no matter what your side are on, Russia, Ukraine, we're going to pay the price. You're going to pay more in food. You're going to pay more in gas. You are going to pay more in cost of living. You are going to not have as much work. And what's going to happen? The U.S. government, because of inflation, I don't know if you guys know this, but inflation and, well, taxation is theft, essentially. That's me sounding very libertarian. But when inflation goes up and you are having to spend more, the American government is getting more through your taxes. So there is, and don't get me wrong, I'm not like we should get rid of taxes or anything like that. It's not a whole different conversation. What I'm trying to say is, if you really want to protect the people of Ukraine, get a fucking electric car. Get a fucking better job. Better be making 150, 200 grand, because that's what it's going to be. And if that's what we should do, I guess then maybe that's what we should do. But how much are we willing to take? This country doesn't serve us. We sent 15 million aid to Ukraine, which we were just giving them, and we're giving them weapons as if they're going to win this war against a nuclear superpower. That would be like if we invaded Afghanistan and China was just like giving the Afghans like all these weapons as if they could defeat America. I mean, well, they kind of did defeat America, which is ironic. But the point being, even taking that risk is stupid. I think, Ukraine should never be a part of NATO because that's nuclear. I mean, like why is that a big deal? And no, not any country can just be part of whatever military alliance, whatever. Fucking wake up. And here's the thing. We're going to learn more about this. I want to talk about the Bidens. There is a video you guys should watch, and I'm going to post it in the link. It's by Real Life Lore. Some of you might know that YouTube channel. He does a really good job talking about the oil that goes through Russia and Ukraine and Nord Stream 2. And he breaks it down very, 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 very simply. And I think understanding the context of how oil runs through Ukraine, and also why the American government would take the position it wants. Now, I did not vote for Donald Trump, nor did I vote for Joe Biden. I truly do not believe. I am a Gen Z. I've said this before and I'll say it again. None of these people are even remotely close to meeting my needs. They're not working for me, so what's the point? It's all a lie. I'm very disillusioned by the American government and institutions. They've done nothing for anybody over these past few years, except divide us. But I was hopeful for Joe Biden. I was so hopeful because I didn't really care for the Trump years. It was very polarizing. It was very, and also he was like, I'm anti-war, but then had people like John Bolton like in his cabinet, and it was just a fucking joke of a, thing. Not a lot really got done. Regardless of, people are like, he was the best. Not a lot got done. But I was hopeful for Joe Biden because I figured he would be much more about the peace. But this motherfucker has literally been like, trying to literally divide us, which is, I'm sorry, I'm a Libra moon. I think that's one of the worst things you could do is divide your people as a leader of a nation. And I had more hope for him. Unfortunately, he has lied to you, and he has said that inflation is Russia's fault. It is not. That is because we injected 40% of cash ever printed injected that in 2020, which all that did was transfer wealth from you to the upper classes. And then, yeah, this is a lot of corporate greed. Now, a lot of people think that the high oil prices are corporate greed, and that's not necessarily true. When you have a lot of money, your whole goal is to make a lot of money. So you look for investments that will make you that money. Oil is no longer a good investment simply because everybody in the Biden administration is going green. So why would you dump millions of dollars into oil production if you know it's not going to be a thing in 5 or 10 years? So there is not going to be a lot of oil production here in America. There is no, anyway, I had a lot more hope for this administration. There is a lot that could happen and change, that he could control, getting rid of the gas tax, getting rid of, God, there's so many things they could have done, but they sent 15 million to Ukraine for aid instead, which again, maybe I'm not against sending, aid to, I guess, other countries, but my question is, when do we get help? And people are like, we could pay more oil prices. If you are more about paying gas, I just want to say you do not speak for the working class of America. You do not speak to the poor. And I'm talking, and it's so fucking ableist. I hate when people call me a fucking ableist on any fucking regard, because I'm so anal about making sure that, because it's the society is built for able people. And I think what is considered disabled is crazy, but it's so fucking ableist of people to be straight up ableist. Do you know how many people are on a fixed income and that literally cannot afford $1 or a penny more in gas? Let's talk about California, for example. And in California, where you are pretty much forced to drive wherever you go for work, long hours, and wait in that long traffic, you're already spending the highest amount in rent. You're already spending the highest amount in taxes. You're already spending the highest amount in gas, and you're spending the highest amount of time in commuting. And now they're going to be now you have to spend more money on that commute. And again, this is what this will do, is this is sending us more into poverty. That's all this is doing. This isn't helping the Ukrainian people. The only help for the Ukrainian people is saying they can't join NATO, calling for a ceasefire, and getting a peace treaty. But the administration doesn't want to do that. The media doesn't want you to do that, more specifically, because the media, the Joe Biden administration has been very like, we're not going to go to war. We're not going to go to war. We'll fucking see. But the media specifically, ABC, MSNBC, all of this shit, they want war so fucking bad that they are willing to lie and fucking manipulate and propagandize you to where you go, you know what? War is a good idea. We should defend the Ukrainians. Let's go to war. And if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. What I have to say about that is, this isn't just a war where we go to Afghanistan or Iraq and we just, murder hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians and walk away fucking with a bunch of oil and Dick Cheney fucking walking off with a bunch of money. No, this ends with calamity and disaster. And I'm saying this as this is real life. And it's shown in the astrology. Things are changing. America's hegemony is coming to an end. Other superpowers are up. This is real life. And why I'm saying this too is it's going to be really, really confusing seeing the events of the future if you don't understand what's going on. The astrology is going to be, I see a lot of, if you are listening to the mainstream media being like, oh, Ukraine's going to beat Russia, it's going to come to it's going to come to an end. It's going to come to a treaty, and the treaty will look good, but it's just not looking good it's not looking good for the Ukrainian people. It's not. I don't know at what degree, but it's just not. So, and it will eventually come to a peace deal. But it's the other thing I want to say too is, because I wanted to talk about the Bidens again, because I think and there's a few reasons. I talked about Joe Biden on my Patreon because he's in if you know annual perfections, he's in an 8th house year of death. His moon in Taurus in his 6th house is getting activated. Last time this happened, he had like a brain aneurysm and shit like that. It's not looking good for Joe Biden. I personally think Joe Biden's going to die within this next year, or he's going to relinquish his seat in office. That is because I think the Hunter Biden laptop and this Burisma. I mean, I don't know if you guys know what Burisma is, but it's like a oil gas line thing in Ukraine. So the president's son makes money off of an oil gas line company in a country that we're arming and raising like anyway, it just leads down a path that eventually we're going to know more about. I don't know what it means. I don't know what's going on, but I do know it's leading to a path of eventually the Biden administration having a few things on its hands. I do think, though, Joe Biden's just going to die of health reasons, or they'll 25th Amendment him and they'll be like, he's fucking old, and maybe we shouldn't be in like a World War III with this fucking jagaloon on the fucking, in charge of the nuclear powers. But, then there'll be Kamala Harris, which will be another problem. But we're going to find out. Because the other thing is, what I thought was really interesting is Trump got impeached the first time because he called Zelensky on the phone. A lot of you guys don't even remember that. The first time Trump got impeached, he was trying to call Zelensky and be like, hey, we're not going to give you aid or money unless you give me dirt on Joe Biden. And he didn't. Which is interesting. That's just interesting. Okay, like that happened. And then also, Joe Biden and Zelensky go way, way back. They've been like best buddies. This is all stuff that you can find out for yourself. And so, anyway, again, this is a Mercury-Neptune conjunction I'm speaking this on. There's a lot of floating pieces here. This is a confusing time. It's very complicated. It's not as easy as Putin, a bad, Ukraine good. Putin's bad. I totally agree with that. He's a, autocrat. But we have egged this war on because the American military-industrial complex wants war. This is about power. This is about money, like it always has been. This isn't about defending the Ukrainian people, which, by the way, support neo-Nazis. Which, by the way, just a few moments ago, before World War III, when we were getting ready for a two-tiered society based of vaccination or not vaccination, and we were going to enforce a health passport, which is what they did in Nazi Germany, by the way. So when we were doing that 5 minutes ago, mind you, there was like one swastika found on the trucker protest, and then that immediately disenfranchised the whole trucker protest, which that trucker protest was fighting for your rights too, by the way. And they were like, oh, those are Nazis, can't listen to them. But we can defend a Nazi government. I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm doing this video because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be addressed. I'm not saying, this is, I guess, I am saying what I am saying, I guess my opinion, what I think should be best. I think what would be best is disarmament, like ceasefire, create peace, whatever. Russia has to have some type of, thing against it, but I don't know what that looks like either. But it's also not my job, to be honest with you. But my job as an astrologer is to show you guys, because like, if I don't understand this and I'm over here looking at the astrology thinking everything's, handy dandy and everything's going to go according to plan, then I'm doing you guys a disservice. It's my job to understand this stuff. It's not your job to understand this. It's my job to understand how this is going to look in the astrology so I can better inform you when I do my horoscopes, when I do my readings for you guys. And you know what I'm coming from right now is this is going to be a rough decade. This is not changing anytime soon. This Russia-Ukraine thing, this World War III thing, it's not going away. It's going to be happening. And this is much more about when you understand that, the astrology makes a lot more sense. And I think when you have that sense of empowerment, I think because I think the worst thing I think not knowing is the worst thing. I mean, I think one of the things that really got me into learning about like geopolitics and all this stuff was during the Trump administration. Every day it was like, this guy's quitting and this guy's getting, going to jail and this. And I'm like, who the fuck are these people? And I had no idea. And so I've been studying this. I've been learning this stuff. Of course, there are going to be people in the comments that know a lot more than me. And I want to hear your opinions. And I know a lot of people are going to tell me I'm wrong. I know, and we're all going to disagree. And I guess there's no helping that. I would just say I'm regardless if you disagree with me, I'm truly coming from a place of like, I really want to be of service right now. And I think being of service right now is saying like, hey, this is not looking good. We have been lied to. This is much more complicated than it might seem right now. And we're going to pay the ultimate price. The Ukrainian people will also pay the ultimate price. I mean, clearly, rather than saying we won't be a part of NATO or the EU, I mean, Zelensky's literally kind of like, now he wants more peace talks, but America, we don't want peace talks. We don't want that. We're just going to keep arming them. I mean, even Zelensky said himself, the Americans are not helping with peace talks. So we'll see where that goes. This is all open to change. This changes every 5 minutes. So again, there's probably a lot of you that aren't even listening up to this point, but just know, this situation's going to change. It's not going to look like how it is the way that I'm talking about it right now. But this isn't just like Putin invaded Ukraine and we need to do something about it. If there's something, and if we are going to do something about it, then how about we stop arming the Saudis for their, for what they're doing in Yemen? How about we stop, buying from China, which China is ethnically cleansing Uyghurs in Western China. And they're also going for Tibet too, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that. They want to get rid of all religion and pretty much ethnically cleanse them and assimilate them into Chinese way of life. So, we could stop that. Gosh, what else? We killed 200,000 Iraqis. How many did we kill? We're bombing. We have troops in Syria. In Afghanistan, we literally bombed like a fucking family instead of like who we thought we were supposed to bomb. Guys, if we're really going to stop the bad guy, who's the real bad guy here? It's the American military industrial complex. And again, they're not fighting for you. This isn't about the American people, which this is why in our fucking documentation of government, whole point is for these people to work for us. But they're working for special interest groups. Corporations. This is where I go left too, by the way. A lot of people think I'm very conservative. Like, no, this is all, corporations run all these people. And it's the military industrial complex. And there's just so many, it's all so entangled. This is why I don't really believe in the Illuminati, because I think things are so entangled that it's its own beast of itself. And so I look at this as, again, this all started a long time ago, but most recently, back in 2013, 2014, we had the Ukrainian Civil War. We backed a coup. We installed an American leader that was pro-West, and pro-West meaning we want NATO expansion, which means NATO expansion means nuclear arms on the border of Russia, which means Russia's surrounded with nukes, which means you have a hostile military alliance. Imagine the Taliban and ISIS were putting nukes on Canada and Mexico and Cuba and all of these places. We would be like, what the fuck? Right? Isn't that fucking normal? Oh, no, but we're allowed to put nukes on other people's borders. That's totally what we're allowed to do. That's the progressive thought now. But I think it's very complicated. I think it's also important to be educated about this stuff because if not, and if we don't do something, I think, whether that's having the conversations, knowing who we're voting for, what we're voting for, or knowing what's going on, because you're going to be having questions when oil gets more expensive. You're going to be having questions when your bill gets more expensive. And this isn't going to, by the way, for the people that are like, we should go green, eat shit. Eat shit. I'm an environmentalist. You guys have no idea what I have done to my diet and lifestyle to eliminate plastics, to eliminate, all types of fucking shit. I'm so pro-environmentalist. In fact, something like that's why I couldn't live in Los Angeles, because I would see people litter all the time and I would have a brain aneurysm over it. And I was like, I can't see people litter. Anyway, this whole system runs on oil. If we want to go green right now, that means you're not going to have electricity, you're not going to have water, and you're not going to have money. We can go green, but you're going to live in abject poverty. We don't have the infrastructure. So you can buy an electric vehicle, but guess what? It's going to cost even more to charge your electric vehicle because that still runs off oil. Because it's guys, this is not about left versus right. The American government and the governments of the world right now truly do not care about you and me. And they're willing to take it so far as to cause a World War III. And I want you to sit for that for a second. Yes, should we do something about Russia invading Ukraine and why that's bad? We got to have, something's going to happen. I mean, we already fucking crippled their economy and made the Russian people suffer. So that's going to leave a mark. But really, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to arm them and instigate this even more? Are we supposed to put our own people there and shoot down Russian planes so then Russia could send a hypersonic missile over here and fucking see what happens? I don't know. I do know that there's a lot of lies and propaganda right now. There is a lot And again, you guys are going to listen to this and there's going to be a lot of people like that. Cameron, you're spreading misinformation and blah, 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 blah. Guys, look this shit up for yourselves. Don't trust the MSNBC. These are the same people that lied to you for the past 2 years about everything. There is no trust in the institutions anymore. That's what the Saturn-Pluto conjunction was in Capricorn. That's what the Pluto return of America was. These institutions they no longer serve us. And I think as this develops, this Russia-Ukraine thing, we're going to know more and more about the inner workings of everything. I think this is going to lead to a worldwide conflict. I think we'll have a peace deal with the Russia-Ukraine thing at least soon. But I mean, after that Mars retrograde and Pluto going into Aquarius, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it's going to be a quite turbulent decade. For the most part, most people will be fine. As long as it's not a nuclear war, then that's a little bit different. But I think I covered all my points. I'm not really surprised. I just think this leads down a really bad path. And I also think eventually too, what's going to be weird in America is like, these sanctions aren't going to help us. Russia and China have already formed an alliance. Saudi Arabia, they're trying to get their dollar on the yuan or the yen, or whatever it is. I always forget it. Even though the Saudi dollar is pegged to the US dollar. And there's this term going on around right now called de-dollarizing, which means a lot of countries are starting to realize that dollars aren't safe and they're going to not have the US dollar as its backed reserve currency, which is going to make the dollar worth less and less, which will cause more and more inflation. The Fed is going to raise... Guys, I talked about this in August. I was talking about the Fed raising interest rates when it was misinformation about inflation, when inflation wasn't real. It wasn't real, and then it was transitory. And I told you guys the Fed's going to raise interest rates by March, and I was right. Fed's going to raise interest rates. We're gonna have a crazy economy for a little while. And I think, again, I'm not saying any of this in fear. I'm just saying this of like, hey, dude, this is the fucking reality of what's going on. And again, I don't think, especially for Americans, not a lot will change except for the prices of everything. But unfortunately, the poorest and the lower class are going to suffer the worst. And so I think this would be a great time to. This isn't like sucks to be you. I think this is the time to fucking do something about it, whatever that means, whatever that can look like. Like, I feel bad for the elderly on a fixed income right now, paying more in groceries to feed yourself, which means you have to have shittier food because it's cheaper, because we subsidize shitty food, right? We literally give companies to make us shitty poison food, but we don't subsidize healthy, nutritious food. We don't even know what health and nutrition is in this country. Like, a lot of people, like, no one talks about the fact that the COVID deaths in America were higher than any other nation, but we're also the most obese country in the world. And the obesity and, COVID, correlation causation thing, I think it's a causation. It's obvious. So again, this is a big, I want to make this video just, if all you think is just Russia bad, Ukraine good, it's much more complicated. And this is just a much more real event. And I hope that you don't look at me as this, I'm a Libra moon. I care how people think about me. But I also don't, I thought it was really interesting. Someone's like, you're saying this for like subscriber money. I'm taking a lot of risks with what I say. This is not a popular opinion. And I have a lot of people arguing with me about it. But, and I know I'm going to lose a lot of followers for this. I'm going to lose a lot of, but guys, I'm just doing what's true to me and where I feel like I'm coming from. And you be the judge of that. I think this is a very sticky situation. I think we have egged this on, and I think America needs to be better about doing negotiations and not arming the Ukrainians. I think we need to completely de-escalate the situation immediately, because it is going to get out of control and there are going to be problems down the road. I just don't want them to be nuclear. So I really hope to, when I listened to that Gordon White podcast, I just felt heard. In a world that wants to silence every dissenting voice or any off stream, I feel like I can't talk about anything anymore, to be honest with you guys. And there's a lot of things I want to talk about, but I don't, simply because I just don't even want to deal with the reaction. I don't even want to do this episode, but I want it, but I feel like I have to, because it's so important that you guys understand, like, it's literally impossible to look at the astrology right now and not relate it to exact world events. That's very hard for me personally, especially when I have people, why do people come to astrologers right now? They're going, my rent's going up. Am I moving? My jobs are changing all over the place. Gas is going, like, people come to astrologers because they're trying to figure out what the fuck's going on in the world. And when their whole world economically is about to change, their situation's about to change. So I have to know this type of stuff, right? And I want to make this video because I just want people to walk away thinking this is a real deal thing. And I think, again, it's not necessarily, I think this is to empower you. What kind of, I don't know, changes can you make in your life that, for one, I think maybe the simplest thing is just don't listen to the mainstream media. And I think for yourself. Think for yourself. Don't listen to everybody. And I also, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the future. And don't be afraid of, like, other people telling you, like, do you know how many people I talk to that, like, are afraid to talk about this stuff? Like, unfortunately, I have people that come to me because they've had adverse vaccine reactions. And, they want to know more about their health. And regardless of my opinions, I have to take that hat off and be an astrologer. And people are truly afraid to even talk to their doctor about that type of stuff. People are truly afraid to actually talk honestly about the elephants in the room. So a big reason I'm doing this video is I don't want to be afraid. And I have to practice what I preach. So this is me taking a risk, regardless. People think this is a good thing. It's me taking a risk. But I'd rather have you guys kind of know what's up than not be prepared. So this is going to be a crazy couple years, guys. I think we are going to, again, everyone's situation is different. Everyone's going to walk away from this having a completely different reaction. And so it's hard for me to really just say an overarching, well, this is what I have to say to people. I have something different to say to each individual, to be honest, because you all are unique individuals with own lives and opinions, and that's wonderful. So I don't know. I really just wanted to do this video because this is such a crazy thing, and it's not that simple. It's not, and this is going to get out of control. This is going to get crazier, and we need to be vocal about this opposition. I know a lot of people really. It's, again, I want to protect the Ukraine people too, but protecting the Ukraine people doesn't look like arming them. It doesn't look like joining NATO. It doesn't look like setting up protecting the Ukrainian people looks like is immediate ceasefire, no NATO, no EU, complete neutral zone, which is what Russia wanted, by the way. Like, Russia, all they wanted was Ukraine to be neutral and no NATO, no EU. But now they want the Donbass region. Now they want to do other things. And unfortunately, they're going to have to kind of probably bend to the knee of that because it's going to get rough. So I think the best way to protect the Ukrainian people is to actually de-escalate. I saw this thing. It was like, I forgot what tweet it was, but it was like the Ukrainian government's taking de-escalation classes from like the Minneapolis police. Because that's what they're doing. De-escalation to them is arming themselves and doing this war thing. And so, again, this is a complicated situation, guys. This isn't about my opinions are going to change about this too. We're going to see what ends up happening. Maybe I'm wrong. And I'm totally open to being wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things. I could name a lot, but I've been wrong about a lot of things. So maybe I'm wrong about this. But I would much rather, I think at this moment, again, I hate reading comments because they get to you. No matter what you want to do, they get to you. But this one comment got to me of like, oh, you're doing this for subscriber money. If I was doing this for subscriber money, I would tell you we need to protect Ukraine and we have to be there for the Ukrainians. And I'd be shilling the same fucking story that every other motherfucker's shilling at you. That's what people do for money. They don't go against the mainstream narrative for money. They go with it for safety, for protection, out of fear. I can't live my life that way, so that's just not who I am. If you know my chart, it's probably pretty evident. So, so much to talk about. I think I got everything to talk about. again, this is a crazy situation. We're going to see what ends up happening. Again, the Mars-Saturn conjunction here at the beginning of April. We're going to see what happens. That's going to be a pretty big day. It's not looking good. Then we're going to see the Jupiter-Neptune-Venus conjunction at the end of April, April 30th. That will probably be some type of peace deal. And then we go into May, and then, you know, the Mars retrograde, and then the Pluto thing. And so it's just, we have buckled into a roller coaster, and we're on our way. No turn around now. But we live in, and this is something I guess I'll end on too, because this is what got me of the end of that Gordon White podcast. If you're Gordon White, you're listening to this, that fucking so inspiring. You were put on here for a reason. We are living through a complete change in humanity. There's something exciting to say about that. But I also think there's a duty in that. Don't let this, I don't know, just pass by. You know, be a part of the change. You have an integral role to play in this. You are not unpowerful. That's what they want you to think. But you do have power. And regardless if you don't think you have power, you do. I think that's not a decision for you to make. You know, it's oftentimes the powerless that really show off their power. I think of school shooters, who they might feel powerless, so then they have to react and show how much power they have. You have power, and you should use it. You should wield it. And I think the way to wield it is by knowing. I think we live in a time of being able to educate ourselves and learn about Russia and Ukraine's history, learn about NATO expansion, learn about what the George Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and the Biden administration, their policies on all of this stuff. Look into it for yourself. It's hard. It really is hard. And maybe it's not your job. I sometimes feel like it's my job to kind of do that stuff because you guys listen to me, but anyway, I'm just kind of rambling and ranting at this point because I've gotten rid of all of my points. Yeah, I think we're going into interesting times, guys. The astrology will guide us, though. The astrology will guide you. We're on a ride. It's not, even if you want to go, oh my God, this is what I love about doomsday preppers, because they're always like, stop. Okay, don't get me wrong. I have an emergency bag and stuff. Everyone should have that kind of stuff, right? Just don't be dumb. But I don't know, the doomsday preppers is just kind of bro, really? It's probably not going to be that way. At least here in America. America will be, we got our own shit going on. But anyway, that's what I have so much more to say with this too. This is a bigger conversation. I think the hardest part talking about the Russia-Ukraine is that it's bringing apart a lot of things. So I know this is a long episode. I really appreciate you guys listening all the way through this. I hope I was able to provide value, because I think that's what my ultimate mission is at the end of the day. So with that being said, I'll leave you off with that, and I'll see you next time.